Qweerty Gamers provides a safe platform for both developers and LGBTQIA+ gamers to connect and learn from each other. We offer developers access to the unique perspectives of dedicated LGBTQIA+ gamers, consultations on queer representation, focus groups on game development, as well as programs and workshops to develop skills and prepare LGBTQIA+ gamers for careers within the industry. So make sure to follow Qweerty Gamers on social media and find out more at qweertygamers.org.
Hello and hi, everybody. It is me, your friendly neighborhood vice president of Qweerty Gamers, back with another exciting Q&A that we have here on our Twitch channel. It's been a while since I've appeared, so it's nice to see everybody. Thank you so much for coming by and watching this really fun Q&A, which is all about education and kind of the training the new people in the video game sector. So I'm very excited to introduce our participants from CHAMPS, Charter High School of the Arts, and Amanda Escott, Programming and Game Design Department Chair.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Qweerty Gamers Twitch channel. I'm really excited to have you both on and talk a little bit about what you guys all do. Let's start with just the mission that CHAMPS has. I was reading that says to educate, guide, and inspire creative and critical thinking through artistic experience. Now, I'm going to start with Linda. Why don't you explain a little bit about your role at the school and kind of what the school stands for in your opinion?
I'm the principal and director of the school. So that I essentially oversee everything, and I have a whole team that supports me, and we work to fulfill that mission that you had mentioned. I could talk a little bit about the mission if that works
Please.
for you. Educate, guide, and inspire creative and critical thinking through artistic experience. Some of the words that really resonate are the creativity and the critical thinking. And one of the things that we talk about is 21st century skills, which is, it used to be that people went to school and it was for the 3 R's, and reading, writing, and arithmetic. And of course, only one of those actually start with an R. So, education wasn't that great back then. And now we're talking about the 4 C's, which are creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. And so we're really preparing for students for a career in multiple areas. It's authentic learning. The other thing that is through artistic experience, we believe that learning should be visible. It should be performance-based. We know if someone has mastered a standard by seeing them in a performance, by creating that game, by finishing a game, moving up, leveling up, all those types of things. And then lastly, the artistic part. There used to be a saying that said, no child left behind. At CHAMPS, we believe that no right brain, the creative brain, should be left behind as well. And that our job is to focus on the whole child. And that's sort of what sets us apart. And it's a beautiful community.
Well, as a fan of the arts and, and being a creative person myself, I would have loved to have gone to a school like CHAMPS. I did not, but it sounds like a wonderful learning environment. Amanda, why don't you tell us a little bit about your position and kind of what you bring to the CHAMPS environment?
Yeah, so I started at CHAMPS about 6 years ago as a science teacher, actually teaching chemistry. And over the time that I've been at CHAMPS, I slowly started picking up computer science classes. And eventually we had the opportunity to make a new academy, which was programming and game design, which is focused on basically those 21st century skills, teaching students how to be programmers, game designers, and actually doing that. So it was something that didn't exist until this year, actually, is the first year that the academy exists. And a lot of that was just because of the fact that there was a desire amongst the student body. They wanted something, there were students who were going to CHAMPS who wanted to do something related to computers. and related to video games. And so I took the opportunity to kind of, you know, challenge myself and learn computer science more than I already had and start to build that academy out.
That's incredible. One of our secretaries, sorry, I don't know, the audio got really weird for a second. You know, technical difficulty, everyone, apologies. Our secretary, Caitlin, she is also known as Callie, primarily in the chat. She went to CHAMPS, and she was saying how she did not go to this course, obviously, because it's brand new, but she would have loved it at the time because, of course, you know, we're all involved in the video game community and industry here. So yeah, I just want to thank Callie for bringing this all together. Also, just a quick reminder for those watching that if you would like to ask any questions, please write it into the chat. I'm monitoring it, so happy to ask any questions that you might have. When people think of the arts, people, of course, usually think of painting or sculpture or theater or whatnot. So how do video games kind of fit into the mold of an arts school?
I mean, video games are an art form. There's music, there's writing, there's so much creativity involved. I mean, if you think about some of the games that have come out recently, they have amazing storytelling. And, you know, I talked about this a lot with my fellow teachers because, you know, one of the things that I want to build is these kind of cross collaborations between academies. So having writing academy students, instead of just working on writing cool poetry, you know, maybe writing a scene inside a video game, or, you know, talking with our theater and dance students and those teachers about the performance side of it with motion capture. And so I think that it's something where when you start to dissect a video game and look at a video game in detail, you see all the different arts that are involved and really start to see that gaming itself is an art form, both playing games, but also really making games, which is the focus of the academy, is teaching students how to actually make games. And it's more than just, you know, typing on a screen. It's thinking about story, it's thinking about character, music, design, all those things.
Absolutely. Linda, why don't you tell me a little bit about the creation of the department and kind of your feeling on the 21st century education that you guys both mentioned, about how you know, education industry is kind of different now.
Actually, it came to us in partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft has a TEALS program where they want to promote programming in schools. And it was something that I felt was a critical skills, is that all students should know keyboarding and coding. I just feel it's a gateway skill for their future. And so we partnered with Microsoft, and part of the program was that we need to find a teacher who would actually teach the course, even though they didn't have to be computer proficient. And that we would look for people with programming experience, and they would look for people with programming experience, and we would bring the industry professionals into the classroom. And it would be a collaborative event, and Microsoft would create the curriculum. So we didn't even have to do that. And Amanda volunteered, or else I asked, I can't remember, but the result was the same. And we got a couple people. Yeah, voluntold. And we had a couple of parents volunteer, and one of them is still with us with the game design. He is a programmer, and Amanda can talk about his credentials. But it eventually grew. It started with one section of coding, and then a full year of coding, and then we had AP computer science principles, and we talked about, what's next? And I knew Amanda enjoyed games, and we thought, why don't we start building games? And we were involved with Games for Change and Girls Who Code, and it just grew until we said, I think we have enough interest, we could build out a whole academy. And that's what we did. But it took us about 3-4 years to get there.
How many students are participating in the academy these days?
So I've got about 34 students, about 15 in the 9th grade class, and then a smaller number in 10th grade. I think it's like 10 students, and then 11th grade as well. And then I've got a small group of seniors who we kind of were like really excited to have them kind of test everything out. And so I've got a group of 4 seniors this year. And so we're hoping to continue to grow the program and have, more and more students come in. We also, I don't just, it's not just for programming game design. I have some of the digital media, digital cinema, and robotics students who also take those classes as electives, just because it is something that is really useful to them.
I forgot to say that, by the way. I love your dress. It's beautiful game controller dress, everybody. So where did you get this dress?
This came from a site called Princess Awesome. They make a whole bunch of different like science-y, nerdy dresses and stuff, and they're one of my favorite places to shop because I get stuff that I get to wear to school and it's totally appropriate. I joke that I kind of turned into Miss Frizzle. Anyone's seen Magic School Bus? I definitely like to show off who I am on my clothing.
I love that. One of the questions I had, of course, is how has COVID changed kind of education? How has it changed your daily lives? Obviously, it's impacted so many people around the world. And how are you coping and kind of making the most of that? I find people are being very creative in this space to make the most of it. So I'm curious how you're handling it.
It's really interesting as a teacher because I'm used to walking around my classroom and, working directly with students and seeing what's happening on their screens. I've always been a very tech-forward teacher. I switched over to a mostly digital curriculum a couple of years ago, so I was a little ahead of the curve when it came to having an online classroom. But it definitely has changed some of the interactions. I definitely miss being in person with my students because to me, that's like what drives me as a teacher is being able to work directly with students and, experience what they're experiencing. I think that it's definitely shifted some of the priorities in education. I think that we're seeing a lot more empathy in education than we did a couple of years ago, just because of the kind of crazy circumstances.
Linda, do you have anything you want to add about how CHAMPS is kind of handling COVID and how you might be even being more creative at an art school using the kind of virtual classroom?
I think Zoom has been a godsend. I don't know what we would do in a distance learning modality without it. I think we've seen a major change from when we went on closure in March to the beginning of the school year where we didn't use them. I think that being able to connect and see each other does have a place. Of course, it does also have Zoom fatigue, so you have to take it in stride and not overuse it as well. One of the things, as I said, we're primarily a performance-based school, and so we've been doing virtual performances. We did a play and people shot their part at home, and then we spliced it all together. We did the same thing with a music concert. We did the same thing with a dance concert. So even though we can't be together, doesn't mean that we can't practice our craft and still put on a performance. As they say, the show must go on, and it has.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I've seen some like table readings over Zoom from an arts high and also a game show. So it's just kind of fun how the things you can kind of create and have fun with in this kind of moment where we can't be together. But like I said, making the most of it and being creative is the best thing that we can do in this situation. I have a question from the audience. It says, have any students from CHAMPS published a game? I think it's a little new to publish, but I'm very curious myself.
So I have one extraordinary student who I will let her remain anonymous by her own request. She is very humble, but she has published her own games. So I kind of joke that she knows a bit more than I do when it comes to this stuff. But we're looking at this year starting to kind of self-publish all of our students' work. So the students, the seniors who are working, independently, they're producing games. And so I'm really excited to see what they produce, kind of on like the demo prototype style level. And then hopefully once we're able to go back in person and really the students get back to kind of our more normal educational system, like our more normal, how CHAMPS kind of runs, we'll start, producing some really, really cool things. But yeah, it's all really prototype right now, but I'm looking forward to when it actually is CHAMPS producing games.
That's fantastic. And hopefully we'll at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco when that starts happening. That's a conference I've gone to a number of years, and I love meeting all the indie developers and various people in the gaming industry. So when that time comes, I'll have to
CHAMPS would definitely fit into the indie window.
Another question just came in. Any further news on the new esports endeavor?
Oh, yeah. So
Oh,
this has been something that I've been working on with the administrative team and for a while. So we actually have a team this year, which I'm super excited about. We actually got enough students interested to actually do it kind of in this distance mode. But we're going to have a Rocket League team. We're going to have a team competing in Rocket League this year. So we just so that's actually happening. And then once we return to normal, well, not really probably normal anymore, but once we return to campus, I'm hoping to grow that program and have more teams competing across the board. The thing I love about esports is that everyone can participate. Like there's no, you don't have to worry about a physical. Like you can play as long as you can use a controller in any way, shape, or form, you can compete. So that's happening, and it's gonna hopefully grow over the next couple of years.
What's your inclusivity kind of goals with the school, or when it comes, obviously we're an LGBTQ organization, so I'm just curious if there's any kind of rules written into CHAMPS, or kind of if you champion anybody that is in this kind of LGBTQ space. Linda, why don't you take that?
CHAMPS is known for being diverse and embracing diversity and inclusiveness. I think it's always had a place for the LGBTQ community. One of the things that's unique about CHAMPS compared to other art schools is that some of the other art schools, you have to audition before you could come in. At CHAMPS, there's no audition process. If you're just interested in coming, you just sign up and get through the lottery, and you're admitted to the school. Often we do audition for placement, sort of in the performing arts. I don't think there'll be an audition for placement yet in the game design, but we could always hope we could get there. And we have such talent coming in that we might have to jump up a level or two. That could be a goal in the future. But there's never been, we were probably one of the schools early on when we had non-binary bathrooms, and I know that, so we've always been that inclusive place. Before it was the law to do so, we just did it because it was the right thing to do. So
That's great.
Gives you an idea of who we are.
I love hearing that. I will say, interacting with the video game industry, it can feel very inclusive and very exclusive at the same time. So it's nice to know that there is a space at CHAMPS where people can kind of feel comfortable like that. What are some goals for the academy, the Video Game and Programming Academy?
I mean, it's one of those things where like the sky's the limit. I'm hopeful we continue to grow. I'd love to have as many students coming through as possible, which would mean getting to hire more teachers and having a larger footprint. I think, kind of one of the short-term goals Linda and I have discussed many times is having computer science classes for all our students, because it is part of that 21st century set of skills, and then being able to offer the game design classes to whoever wants to attend them, not just within the academy, but students in other academies can take it as an elective. I think in the long term, it's having students who go through the program, graduate, and get to go to, whether they go into a college and study game design or computer science, or go into the industry and have that, kind of laundry list of alumni who are out in the industry and get to share their experience with students who are coming through after them.
Now, I'm curious, when you are teaching these students or you're leading this academy, what kind of stories are they wanting to tell? What is the experience that you're having as far as like what's the future of video games from your perspective?
I think that it's something where it's really based on students' own experience. So a lot of them are wanting to tell stories that relate to them, which I think is what we're seeing in the industry as a whole, is that it's no longer about those AAA titles. We're seeing a lot more indie titles that are more personal and more related to what people are interested in. With the very small group I have so far, the majority of games are built right now around our Games for Change, the student challenge that we participate in, which they have preset kind of ideas each year. But within the Game Design 2 group, it's all very different. They all have kind of their own story that they're wanting to tell, which is part of the whole design experience. Is what's the story, right? What are you wanting to share with the world? And I have one student who just wanted to build something that was kind of a simple simulator, just a relaxing game. And I was like, that's a great idea. And I have another student who's building this whole story-based, person trapped inside of a computer, escape from the computer type of thing. And it's all very driven by what the students are interested in.
That's exciting. I love that. We had a question that says, does CHAMPS have any plans to send students to GDC, PAX, or other conventions?
We haven't talked about that yet. I mean, I think it'd be really cool if we were able to in some way, shape, or form, but I think it all just depends on, what the academy is able to do and what the school's able to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be quite an epic field trip.
It definitely would be. It'd be a field trip that I would be more than happy to chaperone.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, we're on Twitch, and so I'm curious: are either of you are you Twitch users? Do you know much about the platform, and do you see it having maybe even a home in your education?
So I am a Twitch user. I watch a lot of different streams. A lot of video game reveals now are happening through Twitch or YouTube, kind of simultaneously. I think that it's something that's really interesting in terms of almost a crossover between our programming and game design and our digital cinema academies, where they're looking at different forms of film or television, and I think the digital environment space is growing. I know I've seen a lot of stuff from different teachers in different places that they use Twitch in lieu of Zoom because it has certain types of interaction and other things. And so I think that, as we move forward into the 21st century, we're going to see more kind of growth in education on Twitch. And I think you'll eventually start to see educational streamers, people who are streaming about, whatever it is they're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there's a lot of cooking ones as well.
Yes.
Yeah, Linda, I don't know if this is your first time on Twitch or if you're familiar with the platform.
It is my first time on Twitch.
Well,
I'm a
welcome
novice.
in. We are so happy
So-
to have you have your first Twitch experience with us here at Qweerty Gamers. I see there's a lot of board games behind you.
Oh, yes.
Now, what is the capacity of education and board game design? Do you think that this is something that CHAMPS might explore?
So this is actually a funny story because way back 6 years ago when I interviewed, one of the questions Linda asked me, and this is something that every teacher at CHAMPS gets asked about, is what creative things are you interested in beyond your academic, career? Because for me, coming in chemistry, I can figure out how to make chemistry and art work. But it was what, and I immediately posted the idea. I was I would love to teach a class on board games and board game design, which she initially was maybe not, but now it's happened with video games. But I think, board games have always been something, you see it in a lot of classes where teachers will say, design a board game around a certain, idea or concept. And I think that, for me, I love board games because they're really, if you get the right games, they're a community builder. They're something that brings people together, and especially if they're fun. And also they're really convenient in a classroom because anytime you have a power outage, you can just pull up the board games. You don't have to worry about trying to entertain students without internet. So I think there's definitely a place for it. I mean, within game design, no one says game design has to be only video games. It's just that happens to be the avenue that we've picked for this, 21st century path forward.
Absolutely. Ways that games are also even performance-based, like the kind of more deceit level games where you have to kind of be creative in the character that you're given, whether it's like a game like Werewolf or whatever, where you're playing a character and you have to be convincing to the other players and everything. So it's really interesting to think about how so many disciplines in the art space kind of come together in the board game spectrum, because it's become so much more than Monopoly, I find.
Monopoly is evil. That's all I have to say.
Another question that came in from the audience here: are there certain preferred code languages that's used, or is all coding taught?
So a lot of it's based on what I know myself and what I'm comfortable teaching. So, and also what curriculum we're using, because a lot of our curriculum is coming from outside providers who have that level of experience in terms of providing me as the teacher with curriculum that I'm then kind of teaching to the students and working with them on. So the two main ones, at the lower level, it's going to be JavaScript. And then at the upper level, it's going to be C# with Unity. So those are the two, but I've learned Python. I'm always happy to learn languages. It's just a matter of student expression. If there's something they want to do that only works in a certain language, then I'm happy to support them and figure out how to make that work within the classroom.
Are you able to combine the student skills into teams, meaning maybe one is better with more character design, one is more better with story development? Are you forming kind of like groups and hopefully creating future gaming companies?
That's the goal. I had this grand idea before COVID hit, because this was, as Linda said earlier, it was 3 to 4 years in process, and the end result is that in their senior year in game design 2, the students actually pitch a game to the class, and then they basically divide themselves into teams based on what games interest them. So, in terms of what pitches the students like, and then they actually, so ideally teams would have someone who is working on the character design or story design, students working on music and art assets and things like that. COVID makes it a little bit more challenging. So right now, a lot of the students are working independently. But I think that once we go back to being on campus, that's definitely the goal, is that students are collaborating with each other and working as part of teams. And who knows, maybe one of those teams will go on to found a new company.
I love that. Linda, is there any goals that you're trying to reach on your end of things? Sure. Are there any goals that you're trying to reach as principal and director of CHAMPS?
We always want to increase enrollment. So part of it's getting the word out on who we are. We are an independent charter school. We are chartered through a LAUSD, but we're not LAUSD. We have about 600 students. We have room for more, and I think we have a hidden gem, and it's how do we get the word out there to let people know that we provide a high, rigorous education and a focus on the arts, probably what you might get at a private school level, and it's public school education. You don't have to live in the neighborhood. If you can get to the school, that's all you need.
That's great. I would love to go to this school. It sounds like a great place to go. I like the concept of that there's no audition, that if you're actively interested in arts, that you can, be a part of it. So if any of our watchers or people in the audience are interested or know anybody with kids that might be going into the high school sector, give Champs a look. By the way, I believe your website is champscharter.org. Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Correct.
Question from the audience: is there an LGBTQ student council, and if there is are they approached by outside folks like Microsoft? Does consulting get covered in the curriculum?
So I know we have a club on campus that does focus on our LGBTQIA plus students, so any students can join that club. As far as outside things, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not the advisor for that club, but I know that all of our advisors for whatever clubs, we're always looking for opportunities. We're always looking for things to bring on campus and give opportunities to our students. So there's always, one of the great things is that there's tons of people on campus who you reach out to any of them and they'll point you in the right direction if they're not the person who can help you directly with that.
That's wonderful. I would love to. By the way, I'm going to offer my volunteer services if you ever want somebody to talk about public relations. I used to go and do public speaking at my high school because when I was in high school, I didn't think of public relations as anything, and then I go and talk to students, and I've been doing that for a number of years. And sometimes they get inspired enough to come to Los Angeles and follow in that career path. And they always come by my office, right when they move to town, and they're just so excited that they were given the opportunity to just be aware of what that is. So anyways, just throwing that out there. And Callie says she's always down to volunteer for Champs once again. So like you got some supporters over here. Well, I guess kind of some final questions just to wrap up our chat is what we've talked about your goals and we've talked about kind of what Champs is all about, but what about outside of the school sector? How are you involved in video games, Amanda?
Well, I'm an avid gamer. I play a lot of video games. It's something that I'll just share with the students because it's always been kind of one of the things that I connect with them on is what games they're interested in and what games I'm interested in. So I do play a lot of games. So that's, as far as my experience, I've been playing games since I was a kid, as early as being able to hold a Game Boy in my hands and just never putting that down. I know it was funny the first year that I took a day off to play a video game. Linda was a little surprised that I actually openly said I'm taking the day off to play a video game because she was, we have a policy where people can take a day off if they want to. Like there's, you get a sub and you have your lesson plans and you can take a personal day. And most teachers will just take the personal day, but I'm always very open about it being I'm at home and I'm playing video games, which my students all love and hate at the same time. Because they love that I'm doing it, and they also hate that they're, they don't get to do that themselves.
What game was it?
Destiny. It's kind of my main game. I told all my gamer friends, I'm hoping some of them are in the audience. I don't know if they are or not, but I actually missed raid night for this. So they were all giving me a hard time because they were like, you'd rather do that than play video games with us? And I was like, well, I see you guys every Tuesday and Friday. So yes.
What's your Twitch channel?
I don't have a Twitch channel.
You just watch streamers. You don't.
I watch streamers, yeah. So I just watch streamers. It's one of those things where it's fun to do on the weekend, or when I have some downtime. But I spend a lot of time in front of the computer currently, so I'm kind of like enjoying just playing games when I have the chance.
We have Learning Genesis in the chat room saying we're here.
Yes, that is one of my gamer friends. Yes.
Wonderful. And Linda, I know you said you weren't very much into video games, but how are you plugged into the arts scene outside of your role at Champs?
I think my biggest role is just a supporter of the arts, trying to get to performances as much as I can. Of course, this whole year has been shuttered but we're looking forward to it coming back. I do have an interesting story about Amanda, so I'm going to finish it. And I told you I would tell this story. So, you know, I've never had a teacher tell me they're taking a personal day off to go play the video game as it just came out, you know, and part of that just went, okay. And I think it sort of, I think Amanda might have been wondering what I was actually thinking. You know, I didn't say anything, but she's going, I wonder what she's thinking. We went to a conference in Kansas City, and we're at the airport and we're flying back, and she hands me this thin paperback book, and it was something about how having a game mindset is important or something, or as I called it, it's uh, I am not a loser. Here, read this. And then she said, and give me the book back when you're done, because I have to give it to my dad next. You know, that was sort of the introduction now. And, you know, and I agree with the premise that of having that game mindset is important. It is just as important as everything else that we do at the school. And it's an art too, you know, engineering and that construction of something, that has to come from somewhere. You're not replicating something that's been done. The goal is always to push the envelope and come up with something new and exciting. So I think it fits perfectly with the concept of the school.
Wonderful. One last question from the audience. By the way, thank you so much for the new follow. I saw we had somebody join us, Anderson Backgray. The last question from the audience. What was the driving force that inspired the creation of the program?
I mean, I think it's kind of a culmination of a bunch of different things. I love teaching chemistry. I'm still actively teaching chemistry, even though it's only one of my 5 different classes I teach now. But I mean, that's what I came to CHAMPS for, was teaching chemistry and this artistic experience, which I thought was completely different from the district schools that I had taught at before. And then Linda approaching me about the computer science programs and starting that up and looking at, okay, where can I take this? Like, I'm always a teacher. I get this from my fellow teachers. They're like, you don't know when to say no. And I'm like, yeah, because I like saying yes. And it was one of those things where it was looking ahead at opportunities. And, you know, computer science I loved, but I thought, what can I do more? Like, what else can I do with it that is forward thinking and future thinking? And the game design was kind of the culmination of that, because it was, okay, what can I do that would attract students to CHAMPS? That's a 4-year program, like most of our other academies, that will give them these skills and actually be something that they're interested in. And time again, I was hearing from my students in chemistry, or even just in my computer science classes, that they wanted more. And so, you know, I'm never one to step away from it, you know, step back from a challenge. And so I took that as a, you know, this is something that we can do. This is something that I'm willing to do. And, you know, Linda was gracious enough to say, okay, let's do it, you know, and that was really the driving force, was that I knew that I had an administrator, my principal and executive director, who was willing to support me and actually back me up on building this out, because that's a, you know, for her, it's a risk. She's losing a chemistry teacher to teach computer science. And, you know, science teachers are a bit rare in the education field. And so for her to be willing to do that was a huge, you know, leap of faith on her part. But I think so far it's turned out really successful, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us at Qweerty Gamers for this, you know, insightful Q&A all about CHAMPS and kind of the future developers of our video game industry. If there's anything that you want to leave off on, or our social media channels to follow, or ways people that can follow up with you, what would that be?
I know Ethan would kill me if I don't say it, so I will say it. So our CHAMPS, so champscharter.org is our website, which has all of our information on it. We also have our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, which are all CHAMPS Charter. So those are all channels that people can follow us at. You'll see tons of different posts. There's things about from all of our different academies. So you're not just going to see stuff about my academy. You're going to see things from music and dance and all of our 9 amazing academies. And it's a place where we're really excited to have people come to.
Wonderful. When are you going to start your charter or CHAMPS charter Twitch channel for all the amazing streams and performances?
I think I'm going to have to talk to Ethan about that after we finish the stream. So coming soon. Yeah, it's
Coming
probably coming
soon.
soon. I'm sure Ethan is up for another task on his plate.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you so much for your questions. We always appreciate hearing directly from those of you in chat. Thank you for all the people that came by to support from Amanda's gaming group. And thank you so much for the new followers and all that sort of stuff. So I will sign us off. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and can't wait to hear more about CHAMPS in the future. We're going to, by the way, before we disappear, we're going to be rating a friend of ours named Call the Flower. So just so you know, nothing that's going to affect you guys as new to Twitch, but we are letting that raid happen. So see you later. See you later, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in.